would say my favorite is nature's ecosystems.
Nature's ecosystems, okay. And where do you most see those? Just everywhere? Or?
Well, when they haven't been, I try to find them everywhere, but they're not everywhere. But,
yeah.
you know, out in parks and preserved places and my backyard.
Great, yeah, yeah. A couple more.
Belle.
What?
Belle.
Okay.
A public park on the Detroit River.
That's great. I think I've only been there once, but it's very pretty. Yeah, it's wonderful. Sonia, we're just kind of, everybody's kind of going around, we're not going around, but everybody's just kind of saying what aspect of kind of public space or commons is their most favorite. Lisa?
I like sidewalks and other places that I can just interact with my neighbors.
Yeah, sidewalks are wonderful, aren't they? I mean, you really kind of, you really think about them, and they're totally government run, government owned. You know, so all these sort of anti-tax people, you sort of like, what are you against sidewalks, really? You know?
Can I add another one?
Sure.
Every now and then I take the bus, and I sit in the back, and I just watch people come and go. And I think public transportation is a wonderful people-watching thing, besides just getting to one destination to another.
Yeah.
Just the diversity of people in these situations is interesting.
Yeah, exactly. Public transportation is a great thing. Tova?
Yeah, I was going to say public transportation. When I lived in New York, and coming from Detroit, where I had my own car, and then I had to start riding the subway. And the thing I miss most about New York is not all the fancy restaurants and all of that I couldn't afford, but it's the subway, where you kind of like, you kind of give yourself up into this community of all these anonymous folks, and you have to sort of carry this trust thing with you that 99% of them are good folk, and that you're all in community together. Every now and then, you know, you're this kind of outlier that does something really weird. But yeah, I think just what Charity said, you know, the sense of community, diversity, and sort of a feeling of being brave to say, okay, here I am with 2,000 strangers I know nothing about, and I think it's going to be okay.
Yeah, and that most of the time it is.
And most of the time it is.
Tova?
Well, I was just thinking about something that in our society, you know, it's visible in its absence, which is public health. But even in this extremely privatized health regime that we have had, and frankly will continue to have, there still is some public health stuff that people don't think of as the commons, but I mean, like the Centers for Disease Control and the, you know, watching out for swine flu and tobacco cessation campaigns, and there's tons of money spent on public health, but it's not labeled as commons, and so we, you know, it's still safe.
Yeah. That would be another example where we miss it when it's gone. We don't necessarily know it's there.
Well, in Detroit especially, I like it when people come from out of town because then I can give them my Detroit tour, which always includes the Heidelberg Project, the Rivera Courtyard at the Detroit Institute of Arts, and the Labor Legacy Project in Hart Plaza.
Great. Okay. Yeah. So some really wonderful public institutions, of which you actually do have quite a few here. Okay. Other people we haven't heard from yet. Marissa.
Well, I gotta say my favorite was the same as Lottie's. Like when I think the fact that I mean, yes, I pay for the bandwidth. I have to do that. But I could go to the library if I want to be on the internet, but just that anytime I think of a question, I can just go and find answers, and I can probably get as deep of an answer as I want, like depending on the question. And just that it's right there all the time.
Yeah, that's remarkable. Anybody else who didn't speak yet?
I guess I would say in our educational system.
Okay.
You know, necessarily both universities, community colleges, and our public system. Yeah. Although for good and bad, you know, it's still available and out there. And I think that if we didn't have it, where would we be as a country and or as a community? And I think that we are very fortunate that we have a variety of institutions here, both private and public, that are available.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, that's another thing, you know, when you first come to Michigan, I grew up in Colorado, so I remember coming to Michigan and going on this speaking tour, all kinds of, started here in Detroit, we went to Ann Arbor, but then we went to, you know, way in the Upper Peninsula, I mean, all over, and it seemed like every street corner was like a community, from my viewpoint, was like a community college. I was like, my God, this is like amazing. There's so many colleges and universities. here in Michigan has been historically some big commitment to seeing that people get educated. And again, that's the kind of thing you're gonna miss when it's gone. Yeah. Anybody else didn't speak yet? All right. So there's a lot of stuff in the Commons. So what I want to talk about today, what I feel like the goal for today is really to kind of reclaim another part of the Commons, which is the notion of time. So time is our great democracy, right? We all have 24 hours in our day, and it's kind of an amazing thing. I mean, we've defined a day as 24 hours. As probably a lot of you know, if you ever read anything about the history of time, there are other cultures that define it as different amounts. And of course, we have to, as we got more accurate at kind of knowing exactly how fast the Earth turns, we every so often have to correct for that. And so, that earthquake in Chile kind of threw the whole Earth off. So now we're going to have to correct again. But it's an interesting kind of thing that we really have all the same amount of time. And we're all in pretty, except for those people who really are terminally ill and kind of know that within 2 or 3 days they're going to be dead. Most of us have no idea when our time will run out. Some of us that are older, like we have that's probably running out sooner than some of you who are younger. That's a known thing. But it's a kind of an amazing phenomenon. So we really don't, in the United States in particular, we don't carve out very often amounts of time like this day, in which we'll all come together and we'll kind of not learn a thing, okay, but we'll kind of think together, how do we want to make our communities better places, okay? And it won't be, here's this strategy and here's the 10 steps to it and here's the booklet about how you can do it in the DVD and so on. We could probably eventually do that, but it'll just be that. And I think so it's a time for reflection and time for thinking. And because of that, what I'm gonna hope to do with you is share, thoughts that I've really thought, but also things that I sort of wonder, and I hope all of you will do the same. Like, you can share absolutely deeply held convictions you have. We want to hear those, but feel free to share a half thought, okay? Sometimes it's really fun to think something and think, I wonder how that sounds to other people. We're gonna look to you, Stacey, then to kind of help with that. But a lot of us were in our work and everything, and we're not super careful, but we're a little bit careful. We try to sound as smart as we can, and and I'm really guilty of that. I feel like that's an important thing. But it's become very important to me in the last few years to kind of say, you know what? It's also sometimes just to kind of think, wow, what would this be like? How would I see what if I thought that? Blah, blah, blah. How would I think about myself? What would other people think about it? And then also kind of we put out a few half thoughts, someone else can add a half thought, and we can have a whole idea that hasn't been seen before. So that's the nature of reflection. And the fundamental basis of this reflection is something that Paulo Freire said. How many of you are familiar with Freire? You guys read Pedagogy of the Press, and a great Brazilian educator. What? Which one? Try to read.
I thought he was smart until
Well, actually, okay, so Pedagogy of the Press destroyed her confidence in herself. That wasn't really the intent, but actually, Pedagogy of the Oppressed is to me a classic example of a book that you do not want to read by yourself. You want to read in a group, because it can only be understood in a group. I think Freire was so brilliant, he almost couldn't think how to just express himself. He expressed himself in a way that a group, and when I first read it, I had the same experience, like, what are people, what? And I would lose track of it, and I think, well, I got to read it in the morning when I'm fresh, I got to read it when I'm hungry, so I'm more alert. A little bit at a time, right. Finally, I read it with a group of people, and we had a great time, and it became so much simpler. Because between all of us, one person would understand what he was talking about, and not always the same person. So, but Freire said something I think is not hard to understand, and I absolutely believe he said in Pedagogy of the Oppressed. He said, we have a vocation to be fully human. This is what we're called to do, to be fully human. Okay? And he said, what if we discover, and I think we have discovered this actually, what if we discover that our present way of life is irreconcilable with our vocation to become fully human? And I think we have discovered that, and so we want to change it. And so if we kind of hold that as our thought, our vocation is to become fully human. okay? And our present way of life is irreconcilable with that, so we really have to make some big changes.